Now entering the building, Mr. James Hall. Take a bow, Mr. Hall. Mr. Ricky Underwood.
We're here to start the meeting for the joint facilities subcommittee meeting with Lowell City Council and Lowell School Committee. Can we do a roll call?
Chairperson Doherty?
Here.
Ms. Del Rossi?
Here.
Mr. Lay?
Here.
Chairperson Leahy?
Here.
Councilor Getchir? Councilor Robinson?
Here.
1 absent, 5 present.
All right, one quick question. Did Counselor Getchia get on Zoom? He was trying to get a link. Do we know? Madam Clerk? We don't know. Okay. He didn't check in? Okay. All right. Thank you. Madam Chair?
So let's jump right to the agenda. The first item on the agenda was an update on the progress made regarding window screens, shades, and door locks. And we have several people here from the school department and the city, so whoever would like to give us that update. The progress made on windows, screens, shades, and door locks. I think we met, I want to say it was like 5 weeks ago, right? And we said we would, give you guys some time to get more of an update on what's been done as we get ready for the start of school.
So I wish I had better news for the committee tonight. We did not get very many of the windows done. The focus, even at that meeting, all carpenters on deck were doing painting and patching throughout the schools. We did have some of the carpenters, and Mark can contest to it, that did fix some of the windows, but we didn't get a big jump on it, like we had anticipated. We did contract, so we did have another vendor come out and look at them and give us pricings. We're waiting on that pricing for the men. But we did not get the majority of the low-hanging fruit windows that I was hoping we were going to get. We probably got 20 of them at the high school. Flip side to that is, the good news is, we visited probably 15 different schools and had painting done in the hallways, patching of holes, a lot of good work. So, yes, we did not divert those carpenters to those windows, but we still have a couple of weeks. We're still hoping to get back to those low-hanging windows, and we don't have a price on the other window parts. There's money that's been put aside by the city side of the tunes of close to $125,000 for new window replacement, with the additional money that the school department would be putting on too. But again, I apologize, we were not able to get the majority of those windows looked at in the month that I thought we were going to. We've been just everywhere in many different directions.
Well, I appreciate that there's a lot of effort going on both sides, and I really sense the collaboration here. It's huge and important, but I think at least and I'm just speaking for myself, the issue with the windows has been a priority for over a year for me because of the whole ventilation issue. And we just came off this incredibly horrible heat wave, which we had kids in summer school, and I'm expecting the fall is going to be hotter than usual too, so I do see windows and the ability to open windows and provide shade as a very important piece of that whole environment conducive to learning. So I'd just like to emphasize that again, and I think that one of the biggest challenges I think we face as two subcommittees working together, a city and a school district trying to work together, is we are so behind on our facilities maintenance, and that's not pointing fingers at anybody, but I think one of the biggest challenges is going to be identifying what are those priority things we need to be investing in right away, and that's certainly, from my perspective on the school side, an important piece, so we know where we're going to put that funding right out of the gate so we can do this collaborative effort. But I do appreciate your candor, and I know you guys have been working hard on a lot of issues, but I think the windows and the ventilation piece is still huge. I don't know if anyone else had any thoughts. Ms. Thompson, why don't you come sit at the table?
We did, however, make progress on the screens. I believe, if I remember, there was 81 screens. We didn't get any progress around the windows, but we have all those screens measured and out with a vendor for being made right now. So hopefully those will be made and in place. So although we didn't get anything done on the windows, we did get a big jump on the screens, and those should be coming in,
And I know that's a moving target because I saw in your report, you're already replacing screens that you fixed last year.
We are.
I'll go to Ms. Thompson and then Mr. Byrne. Ms. Thompson?
Thank you so much, Chairperson Doherty. I think in addition to the ventilation, the concern with the windows was safety. Again, just going back to the shootings, not having windows that can be covered or windows that are secure was more of a safety issue in addition to the ventilation. So again, I applaud the efforts you're making, but that's still a huge, huge concern of mine.
Mr. Byrne?
Thank you, Madam Chairperson and members of the school committee and city council. As Ricky alluded to about the windows and also some door issues, the city has allocated over $200,000 to do some of these repairs. I had a meeting this morning. Ricky was in a training session with Al Luna, so I met with Paul St. Cyr, and we've committed to do at least, I think, talking to Paul, about $78,000 right now for starters to do some repairs to some window replacements and window repairs. We have Suburban Glass Company that we have on retainer. The city is committed to do that. The city's committed to do some fire doors in various schools. I name a few of them, but I know a couple of schools, like one was the Riley, the LeBlanc, and there's other schools that Paul St. Cyr and Ricky have recognized, and we're ready to, go on that. New England School Services will be providing that service to us. As far as ventilation goes, the city has secured a company that we bid for over 300 exhaust hoods, and I think I reported that out at last meeting. That bid has been awarded. We're in the process of finalizing a meeting with Mike Vaughn and myself and Glenn Ravad, and that meeting is to put 300 exhaust hoods on every school pretty much in the city, with the exception of the high school, I believe, because the new high school is is okay, and I think it's been upgraded there. They're getting new exhaust hoods in various phases throughout the school building project, and things have been looked at over there during this renovation project. That doesn't mean that things won't continue to happen at Lowell High School. I mean, it's a huge project. It's a $381 million project that things are going to happen in Suffolk and Scancer, and the city people are all keeping their eyes on, including representatives from the school department as well. So in the exhaust hoods for ventilation, we'll be doing that over the next 3 or 4 months. So there is some supply chain issues that we're negotiating with the contractor right now. So some of the bigger exhaust hoods might take longer lead times, and the smaller schools or the smaller exhaust hoods are shorter lead times. So we're coming up with a plan so that we can make sure that they just don't say that they're not going to do any work until everything comes in. We're allocating a plan. We're putting a plan in motion right now, working with the contractor, making sure that we can secure these parts. A contract has been in place, and we're going to have them moving into schools on the roofs and installing these exhaust fans, and hopefully they won't interfere with any class learning. Obviously, we will work with the facilities managers and the school principals, letting them know that they'll be on the roof doing work. There will be some stuff going on. We'll try to minimize it, but over the next 3 months, we're going to be doing this. We're hoping that we get a lot of it done. We're hoping that we have a mild fall and a mild early winter so that they can continue to get this project done. Obviously, some of them could float into the spring. We hope that does not the case, but it's tough to work on roofs when we got snow up there. So, this is a good project. This is a good thing that has, and we're gonna save a lot of money running these fans, and they're gonna be on a controlled system. So, from the city's perspective, it's a great energy savings for the taxpayers, and we're also going to get rebates on that the city will be able to hopefully use that money and put it back into any of the municipality or school renovation projects. So that's one entity. I definitely completely understand the safety issues that the school committee members have brought to our attention. As Ricky said, we're working hard on some heating issues with some HVAC contractors that we have in place right now, that we've identified where those problems might be, so that we don't have problems come, late October or early November. We're continue to work the funds through ARPA in our own school capital improvement projects, and I think it's a process. We got a little later start, but I think moving forward, it's a positive thing for the schools. I think that, and we are doing some painting in the schools and improvements. So we're doing a lot of things. I think we're not done. It's a long haul. It's a long process. Believe me, I want to make all the students and staff at any of the schools in the city of Lowell safe. I want to make them clean. And I believe Ricky has the same process of when we meet every Monday. I know that it comes from the heart every time we have these meetings. And we meet for a good hour and a half. And they're good working meetings, and they're good dialogues, and things get done. So those are some of the reports that I have. I'm here the rest of the night, and I'll answer any questions that people have. We're continuing putting bids packages together right now, working with the school department to improve, ventilations, and also improve heating issues with boiler issues, preventive maintenance issues with boilers, controls, UVs. There's this, I could go on and on. So we are working it, and I think at the end of next school year, you're going to see some good results. And I don't think this is the end. This is only the beginning of the commitment from, I know the school committee, I know the city council has made a huge commitment, and the city manager's office has made a commitment on the big budget that they passed. So there's a big commitment to put back the schools back together, to make them better, and to improve the air, to improve the heat, and make sure that it's clean, and try to replace, various things that are going on, ceiling tiles and lights and alarm systems and sprinkler systems. So at that, I'd like to conclude with that, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you have for the rest of the night.
Ms. Del Rossi?
I guess I just had one question in particular about the compressor at the McAuliffe. Is that on order?
Yes, it is. School committee.
I just know because it's right across the street from my house, and I see the CTI workers, they're sweating. It's like 93 degrees on the best day in there, and it's been an intense summer, so
We apologize. There's supply chain issues. We have an issue with the Green Elch, the McAuliffe, and the Pawtucket Memorial, and we're just waiting for the pots. I believe the Green Elch pot came in, and that's going to be installed by N&T, I'm sorry. And as soon as those come in, we know that we've asked them to get right over there and get them done. We're also going in there and doing HVAC repairs. Glenn Ravad, who's my deputy in Lands and Buildings, has committed to working with 2 HVAC contractors, and we're doing that simultaneously while we're doing heating issues throughout the school. So hopefully, I can't sit here and say that we're not going to have some issues. We'll have some issues, and but as they come, we'll take them on, and we're gonna address them one by one, and whatever the priorities are, to make sure that the teachers and the students are safe and comfortable.
Thank you. Mr. Lay? Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Looking at the report, seems like we have a lot of windows that still need in the repair. So I'm just curious, by the school opening day, I'm wondering how many percentage do you think we have done? Could we recover at least 50% or close to 100%? So I'm just curious how you would think how much we can achieve by the day that we open the school.
I can find out a little better when the Suburban Glass Company tells us what they have for supply chain product, and they get that installed. So I'd be lying. I don't have a percentage at this point in time. However, if we get a response from them, I think that we could share that with Ricky. Will be there, and he could share that with Jim Hall and the superintendent, and they can send out a communications if that's okay with Ricky.
Thank you.
We should get something, I'm hoping, within the next couple of weeks, next week, that we're talking to them. We know if there's not a supply chain issue, they'll try to get in there as quick as possible. And so the percentages, I think we've allocated at least 75,000 towards doing some repairs and replacements of windows. So that's a good chunk of the money. It's just that I just don't know if there's some parts that are longer lead time items or not. So I think we'll have a better idea within the next couple of days or within the next week. And as soon as we get that answer, we'll give that to Ricky, or Ricky will be there when he gets the answer, and we'll communicate that right away to Dr. Hall and Dr. Boyd.
Thank you. You're all set?
So thank you, Mr. Burns. I know there's a lot of windows, so I really appreciate that answer. Thank you.
Mr. Robinson, Council Robinson.
Thank you. So can you walk me through this? I know initially the big push was HVAC, heat and ventilation, air conditioning. Where did the windows come into play? It seems like it's a top priority. Is this something that the schools decided was a priority and conveyed to the city, or is this a project the schools started taking on and then the city's stepping in at this point? Like, could I get some background on this real quick, please?
So, I'd be happy to hear from Mr. Underwood, but I want to take some.
So they're kind of running together, Counselor. The windows and ventilation just run hand in hand. So part of the guidelines when the whole pandemic started was fresh air was our best form of ventilation. So that's when we started digging, deeper into the windows, or how many windows are actually working, how much fresh air can we actually get into the system, so that's where it all started. And then, then there's also the committee member had mentioned the safety issue. So it kind of started with the COVID, but then rolled into the safety, and now is just part of one of the big pictures. And for the first time that I've been here, there is a lot going on in the school. I'm not saying nothing's ever good, but there's a lot going on in the schools, from HVAC. I think we have 6 different HVAC contractors, outside companies, working in different schools, right now. We have painters and laborers, carpenters and laborers painting in many of the schools, long outs in. So, answer your question, not to jump off track, the windows were part of the CDC guidelines for fresh air and ventilation. And it became a priority at that point.
But as far as the initial replacement, where's this coming from? Is this the city said, okay, this is a priority from CDC guidelines and we're going to start replacing windows, or how did this come about?
So to kind of go back a little bit, last spring, because in order to get the kids back in school, we had to have at least one window operable in each room. And back in the spring, it came to my attention that many of our classrooms, not only couldn't they open the windows because they didn't work or they didn't have screens, they didn't have shades. So I had a motion back in the spring, let's try to get on this, because I saw it as low-hanging fruit to get screens and shades. And it's just blossomed into, as Mr. Underwood said, working together with the whole ventilation HVAC. But you'll see, I think we've moved into the second item on the agenda, which is determining what are our priority HVAC. You've mentioned a couple of schools already that you're waiting for the compressors, things like that. Do we have a list of what those priority HVAC concerns are that should be shared with the community or with the committee?
Well, there was, and if you remember, several meetings ago, we put the dashboard together that, listed red, green, and blue, that looked at the, obviously the red was the most important. So we really looked at that and dug into that deep, gave that out to the different vendors, and separated the district into different sectors so that each contractor, outside contractor, was really focusing on one or two or three schools rather than having them bounce all over the place. So then we could, we kind of focus that money on those particular schools. The list of things is ongoing, but the top priorities have already been given to the contractors. They've come back with us with cost and what they can do with that $50,000 each. So that answers your question.
And that's in concert with the HVAC,
Facilities, assessment report.
right.
Yeah, that hasn't been completed. This is knowledge that we know offhand through our own skills, our own knowledge of the buildings. Al Lunar, Glenn Raffard, other DPW employees, things that we really knew of, and many of those were visual. You could go and you could see that the pump needed to be replaced, or the actuator was aging out. So a lot of that stuff was done then. And then we also had contractors come in and look at the buildings and say, this is what we can do here, and this is what we should do here. So they kind of worked off our list.
So we did discuss this at the last meeting, that you want to go forward with that HVAC audit, or is that the word we're using, audit?
Yeah, HVAC assessment, facility
Oh,
assessment.
assessment, but we can move forward on the priority things without that. That's still the same. I don't know, Mr. Byrne, you had your hand up. I don't know if you had a thought on that, or?
If you're talking about the audit, I don't have a response to that. I do have a response to some of the questions about what we're doing within our capital projects and within ARPA. We're going after some of the AC improvements, talking about, the chillers at the Pine School, Stocklosa. We're bundling that with an MSBA project that is going to come under our a 25, I think it's 25A project that they're doing, MSBA project at the Stocklosa. We're going to kind of piggyback onto that, and there'll be an HVAC improvement at the Stocklosa as well. There's also many other projects that we're doing related to HVAC that, as I alluded earlier to one of your school committee member, that there's 4 or 5 projects that we're just waiting for a pot because of supply chain when those come in. And then there's other schools that are online with HVAC. They already have AC, and then we're also tackling other areas where we have multiple contractors that are just taking care of HVAC. We have 2 outside contractors that we've allocated close to, probably $350,000 to do HVAC repairs and upgrades to various sections of the schools. So we've committed, city's committed to making sure this happens, but it's a process. There's a supply chain issue, and we're working everything that we can. If we can't get a school back online AC-wise, it's not because we're not trying. It's because we can't get the pot. So, some people might be upset at us. Staff might be upset at us, and believe me, I feel for it. I feel for them. I don't. They're not great working conditions, and nor do we want to put them in those type of conditions. But going back to the window, that I can maybe help answer Councilor Robinson's question. The city's committed to do some window and door replacements, but it was part of capital improvements. And capital improvements, how we got involved, capital improvements just got passed in the budget come, I want to say, late June, early July. So our capital money, we were able to start maybe spending it, say, first week of July. So it's only 6 weeks out that we can spend any of this money to help you with the windows and that. We want to help, whatever we can do to help, and we will continue to help. It's our obligation to make sure that these buildings are good and up and running and operating and safe. But there's some time windows that this money just got allocated, and there's a process that you got to go through, procurement processes, or if we're not procurement, we have to make sure that the vendors are not out straight in other communities doing projects. So that's where we're at with everything. I think we'll be in good shape over the next several months, but we're also going to make sure that we try to make sure our schools are prepared when they come back. I'm sure over the next 2 or 3 weeks, Ricky's crew and my crew and the custodial staff, they're going to be working very hard, and long days and long hours, and 7 days a week probably in some cases, to get the schools ready and up and running and making sure that they're good.
Council Robinson.
Thank you. So what I'm hearing, I mean, we share the common goal of getting the schools ready, up to snuff. My only concern, it seems like the word the commissioner touched on, process. It seems like the process has been ignored quite a few times along the way, and then the questions come, what's the city doing, what aren't we doing? Process. There's currently a plan in place where when work is to be done in schools, it should be checked with the city. And I know things have been happening where the city was not aware, although we're looking to partner to get a lot of this stuff done. I think moving forward, though, prioritizing, where did this audit for the HVAC systems come from? Was that internal?
I think actually, it's not the audit is not the right word. It's an assessment to have an outside contractor come in and assess the HV. And this was, I want to say, over a year ago that we talked about it. And the city was going to bid it, manage it, all that, but we had agreed to pay for it. We voted to pay for it as a study so that we would know everybody's on the same page of what the priorities are. And I don't know if Mr. Underwood has a better understanding, but that's my memory. And we never got the RFP out. So a lot of time went by. And that's why at our last meeting I asked, is this still useful? And I did get the sense from Mr. Byrne and Mr. Underwood that this outside kind of overview look would be important, but that they already knew what some of the priority areas were.
Well, and that's the thing. So first and foremost, boots on the ground. Our teachers are going to be able to tell us exactly what's going on in the classrooms as far as heat and air conditioning. But as far as an assessment or audit or whatever you want to call it, that's something I think we need to bring an outside source in and go through and prioritize. So that way both entities can sit there and say, here's our list, here's our priorities, let's attack it. I mean, everyone's an expert, it seems like, but nobody's an expert. And we're chasing our tail here. I mean, there's money being spent that no one knows about, and then when it's found out, okay, let's do it for the sake of common good. That's not the way this should be working. And that's why the work is not getting done, because at the end of the day, the city is the landlord. And I don't care if you do construction for a living. You might be able to assess your landlord's building, but it's not your building. So we need to come up with a solid game plan that people are on the same page with, and come up with a course of action with real commitment. I keep hearing from week to week that, oh, well, the city's contributions are minimal, or the school's paying for this, or let's get on the same page. I mean, how many of these meetings have we had? Truthfully, there's an agreement in place right now that any kind of work that's done on city-owned buildings, whether it's in-kind donations, whether it's whatever way it comes from, you have unions that could be filed grievances right now because the work's being done, but they've been working with the commissioner and on the city side and not looking for that because they're flat out. But I think we're putting serious money on both sides, serious investment into upgrading our facilities. Let's do it the right way, because throwing money at the wall and putting Band-Aids on things is what got us to where we are now. So I really think an assessment is definitely in order. I think so we can prioritize. I mean, what are we in August? September, October. 2 months, you know what's happening. We're going to get that first cold day, and guess what? It starts all over again, just like the first hot day in the spring. We need that assessment like yesterday from an outside source that can come in, diagnose everything that we're looking at, and then start coming up with a game plan together. And I think the only way that's going to happen is by sitting at the table. And it's not a subcommittee that's going to do that. It should be the commissioner. It should be the facilities director on the school side. It should be the superintendent and his team, and it should be the city manager and his team. It's not for us to prioritize this, because we're talking, if we're looking at ARPA and ESSA funding and all these different baskets of money, none of us here have the authorization to even start talking about how that money's being spent, for one. For two, one thing I can say, we discussed last night at the council floor. We've been seeing some pretty good revenues from the cannabis business. The council before me, they put 25% of the 3% basket towards projects related to schools and infrastructure. So there's different funding mechanisms that the city is willing to commit to, but I think it's the water's so muddied that it's hard to really dial in and say this is where it's going. And then everyone's scratching their head saying, how's this money being spent? I don't see the progress. I mean, yes, we're all up against the gun with supply chain issues. Yes, we're all up against the gun with lack of staffing. But if we prioritize, and not necessarily even the low-hanging fruit, if we have some professionals come in, diagnose, say this is where you need to go, we can formulate a game plan that at least will get our parents, our students, and our teachers heat, because the cold weather's coming. And I think I've been hearing the HVAC is large ticket items. We both have money available to improve learning, education, facilities, infrastructure. Let's get a game plan together and start moving, because, I mean, every one of these subcommittees I've been to, it's like, yeah, you get an update. Well, this hasn't been done. Well, that hasn't been done. To me, I don't even know who's prioritizing this stuff and where it's coming from. Thank you.
Hear you. Mr. Byrne?
I can respond just to the prioritize. We're in probably 15 to 18 schools right now doing HVAC-related projects. We've identified on the dashboard, we've identified priorities that we feel that we need to, the city's committed that money to make sure that we get repairs, replacement, brand new parts, and we're bidding projects. We're going to be bidding, probably upwards of close to $1 million worth of HVAC-related projects. So we got one out in the street now, and we'll be putting multiple ones out in the next 2 to 3 weeks, working with Mike Vaughn and my staff. And so we are doing it. I think that what Counselor touched on is 100%. I think an expert report to come in and set priorities, we can use it as a plan of attack and go after some things that maybe we missed. We're not the experts, but we have some good people in the room. But if we have an HVAC person or a mechanical engineer that come in and assess what's going on with our facilities, I think it's a great tool. It'd be a great playbook, if you want to tie it to a sports analogy, a great playbook to work with that we can use to make sure that we're doing the right repairs. We're putting good money, that hard-earned residents, taxpayers' money, into the schools that everybody here, including what Councilor Robinson talked about.
Chairman Doherty?
Sounds like Councilor Gitche.
Yep.
Thank you. I agree with Councilor Robinson and also Commissioner Byrne. I think that we're going at this backwards because we have a history here, and the history sometimes wasn't a positive route. But when Commissioner Byrne says a couple of things that really hit home for most people who are in this industry, when you start to look at procurement pieces. So the budget just got set in place. He has to go out and procure the services. You just can't hire somebody. We don't have anybody on a contract, so that takes a little bit of time. I do think that he's onto something when he says, look, you know, we're working on it, and we're working in a progressive way to get this done. And I think this is the first time we've seen this. And Councilor Robinson also touched on something that's really interesting, because as you look at it, this shouldn't really be at the subcommittee. And I understand all the frustrations, but you know, this is something the city manager and the superintendent of schools has control over. We don't have control. We can suggest things for ARPA funds and ESSER funds, but we don't really have control over it. And I do think that the manager has been listening. Give Commissioner Byrne a couple more months, and I think you'll have these contracts in place. And normally what happens is we don't send, you know, the ground troops in there to recommission HVAC units. What happens is you call a contractor in, and they do a study, a recommission report on all the HVAC services. So I think that is the key piece, but I think Commissioner Burns is onto that route. And I think that you're going to see some great progress very shortly, but it's going to take time because of the time frame between procuring things and also getting the boots on the ground. But and I thank Commissioner Byrne for all his hard work at trying to get it together. And I do think the discussions may be a little bit early, and we should just give him a little bit more time to get it done. And I thank all of you for even having these conversations, because I think it's important to kind of set the policies in the direction that we think those funds should be spent. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments.
Go ahead.
Mr. Underwood?
So shine a little light and going back to the last administration and before this, and how this actually facilities HVAC assessment came about, is early on, while the city were in the middle of the pandemic, before we got the ARPA funds, the city in the school department had determined that there was a good chance that we were going to have a lot of money to spend. At that time, the school department was willing to put up $15 million strictly on HVAC in fresh air ventilation, et cetera. At that time, it was the thought that the city was going to put up the same amount of money and that there'd be matching funds. So we were looking at $30 million to spend. It was at that time that we decided, wait a minute, if we have $30 million, we better get some professional guidance on where this money should be spent. Because it was such a large amount, we knew it was going to go in a lot of different places. But when that kind of dried up and went away, or the thought that, that money was going to be, we kind of said, well, now we have this amount of money. We knew where that could spend. We don't need, when we only have, when you have $1,000 and your motor's gone on your car, you know exactly where to spend it. So we had limited money, so we took it upon ourselves to start looking and digging into what we thought were the most priorities. We had buildings that had rooms that were, superheated, and the room right next door would have no heat. So we, those were easy things to identify. So that's how that priority list came from. You will look in the school and you see a boiler that it's supposed to have a redundant boiler and it only has one and the other one's not working. That's an easy thing to identify. So that's really why how that priority list came from. It didn't come from years of experience. It came from years of experience of looking at, you, like I said, that boiler needs to be replaced. That pump is not working. So that's how that can be. If we had more money, we probably would not have the expertise to know exactly where to spend $30 million. But to also shine a little light, that's been pushed around about this facility assessment. But in the last administration, we actually went through that and got the contract done, advertised. It never got signed. We have a copy of that contract that just never was signed. It was just never executed. So now we're back at square one with a new administration and whatnot. And again, we ended up paying for that for the simple fact that at that time the city had not captured the ARPA funds or the cash funds to do that. Where at the same time the school was at limited occupancy, and there was staff shortages. So we were able to have a little bit more money than we'd normally have. But any penny that the school department puts into the buildings is a gift, as far as I'm concerned. We are tasked to clean the building, maintain it, and keep it. So, it frustrates me a little bit when we say that there's a lot of, it's going back and forth, and that the school department has bent over backwards and the new administration to find funds to get these things done, and I think we work very well together. Thank you.
Chairman Doherty, could I respond to that?
Sure.
When you look at the way it was done in the past, we don't go and have custodian staff go out and try to evaluate heating issues. Yes, we can point to something, say the boiler doesn't work. It doesn't mean it needs to be replaced. There's a lot of communication issues. That's why you do recommission reports. And I think that the new administration is on the right track in trying to say, okay, what is the long-term solution? Not just, okay, let's fix it and then it'll break in 2 years and we'll go right back through it. We need to recommission something so that we have the right staff in there that has some background to the units that they're actually working on. So I do think that the effort was there, but I think that this way of doing things is the correct way, and it has long-term solutions. You know, when they came out and they said, and I believe Chairman Doherty had asked me this question before, we're ready to put up 15 million. Is the city willing to put up 15 million in repairs? And I said the same thing. And I'll say it again. Do we have a recommission report that states we need 15 million? Where are we spending the money? Just because a boiler is not working doesn't mean I need to spend 400,000 to fix it. So I think that those are the questions we need answered. And I think short term, we send somebody out to look at it. But commissioning each building is the only way that you're going to actually have people come in here, understand what exact units you have in there, what the communications are between the boiler and the settings. How does that work? And I agree with Mr. Underwood when he says, look, you know, this is the direction we took because we were under the gun to get things repaired. But now we have the money in many accounts. And I do think he's onto something. And I think that working together between all of us, the city manager and the superintendent of schools have to come up with an action with the Commissioner Byrne, who is well versed in this stuff, to make these repairs and long-lasting repairs and hire people who actually do this for a living and continue training at fixing it. Just because we do that Band-Aid, replace the motor, as Mr. Underwood said, anybody can replace a motor when an alternator don't work. And that's the point. The motor may not be the thing that's bad. It could be some other piece. So I just would caution people to look and try to spend that money in an efficient way going forward. And I think that's everybody's goal. And I hope that we can get this done. As Commissioner Burns said, he's out looking at that stuff. So I agree with everybody, but I think there's an efficient way to do it. And I don't believe that you're into it for 30 million right off the bat. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Underwood, what was the study we had done again, or the school department paid for? What was the report you just referred to?
It was the HVAC facilities assessment. It was advertised and put out there with under the Eileen Donahue administration and put out by Christine Clancy.
All right. And they were going to come in and assess everything and go through it?
They did. I mean, they were going to, yeah. So they went out for advertisement. From what I can see by looking at the contract, it was sent through law. The contract was all set. It was just never signed and implemented. Most likely because of all the new players involved,
right.
In all the different directions we've been going, it may have just got overlooked.
All right. And I think right now we have a good combination between yourself and all the experience you have. I mean, over the years, this isn't anything new. This is a long time for you and a long time for me. And over the years, we've been up on roofs and looking around and seeing what has to get done. And now to have Commissioner Byrne here, who has the same type of knowledge and familiar with the city, this is a good combination. And, you know, the bottom line is we have to sit down, like Councilor Robinson said, and figure out the priorities. And, you know, these assessments would be good. I do have a lot of confidence in the two of you. I think, you know, basically the basics, you know, we need to know that the roof's not leaking, fix the HVAC, get the airflow, get the windows, safety, classrooms, you know, I'll go down through the list. And we're on our way, but we do need the commitment on money on both sides. And like you said, any money that comes in through the schools is beneficial. It helps us out, helps everybody work as a team. So, I mean, that's where we have to go. And at this point, we're into August. We have to make sure that the doors and the windows are safe classrooms, safe schools. We continue to work on the air and the ventilation, the heat, HVAC, air conditioning. So I think we have a good staff right now. We just need to make sure that the funds are available from our point of view so you can get the work done that needs to get done. So, and again, we can't do the work here. That's something where, you work with the manager, you work with the superintendent, and we get these priorities done. We're not gonna get this type of money again. We don't wanna go through a pandemic to get this money, but we have the money. So let's prioritize it. We did take a vote for 14-something million. We were trying to get the commitment on the city side. Even if it's 10 and 10 at this point, we gotta have that bulk. We can't go down to a few $1,000,000. We have to get that commitment, get these schools up and running for the kids, for the staff, and make sure that we have top schools. So that's where we should be going. Appreciate all the work that you're doing right now, all the cooperative work and the knowledge that you have. So, this is where we're at the point. We're gonna set our goals, give them to each respective superintendent, manager, tell them what we want to do and what has to happen. And, we know the basics. We got to get these schools up to par. So,
Could I add one more thing? Because I think
Sure.
it's important to Councilor Robinson and Getchier's comments, is in 2018, the city went into contract with a company called OMR, and they did a full facilities assessment on every building in the city. So there's actually a book, a very thick book that identifies every building in the city. In part of that, it wasn't just us looking, going in saying, oh, we need no alternator, so-and-so. We took a lot of that information from that OMR report.
I thought we had that.
Right, and that was done, and that was only done 6 years ago.
Yeah.
So although we probably can't use the cost analysis to that, but all the information is there, life cycles, end of year, reports on every single piece of equipment in the city is identified in that OMR. And again, it's a very useful tool to use. Again, we'll have to look at rearranging cost associated with the things that were, but that was one of the other tools that we used. We didn't really just go in there blind and go, well, look at that pump, it's kind of rusty. Let's throw that on a priority list.
Right.
They outlined a year-by-year plan of what the city should be spending and what the priorities and what they thought it was going to be. So they outlined, let's just say, RTU 2 on the Butler School was in failure and needed to be repaired. That should be done in year 1. So when we did our priority report, we really looked at that, everything that was on that year 20, it actually started in 2020 when we came up with that first report. We started itemizing everything that was supposed to be done in that first year and said, okay, what's been done since now, what's still existing. So there was a lot more thought that went into that list of priorities than just a couple of guys, I think somebody said custodians, walking around knowing what's wrong with their building. There was I think,
Yeah, and I thought we had that list somewhere.
we do.
That's why I know we weren't just guessing.
$275,000.
Mr. Chairman.
If I remember correct.
Yeah. Sure,
Mr. Chairman.
Counselor Getchia? Yeah.
I gotta be clear on this. An assessment and a recondition report are two totally different things. An assessment is something they go in and assess, and the recommission means you go through it inch by inch, piece by piece, and make sure it's working. We had a DPD director put out the services. That's not the way you do it. And I'm saying to you that assessments and recondition reports are two totally different things in the HVAC world. And I think that you need to go to a recommission report and not an assessment and understand exactly each piece, how it's identified and what's working, how it communicates and everything. We had the Morey School that was down for, I don't know the exact amount of time, but the only issue was it wasn't talking to each other. The boiler wasn't talking to the telemetry pieces. So the instruments, I think that a recommission report will actually be beneficial to Ricky's staff in saying, okay, here's the issues, here's the pieces, here's where you can order these parts. It's not a simple assessment. A simple assessment takes a lot less time. It's not as involved to do. And that's what the questions come down to. It's not questioning someone's judgment. It's questioning the right experience going in there. And it's not saying that an assessment is a bad thing. What it's saying is a recommission report actually dives in and gets you a deeper report that gives you actual cost to fix and things like that. And Mr. Byrne knows all about those things. He did it when we recommissioned Greater Lowell when we came through on a renovation project, and it told him every single thing that needed to be upgraded and done. And I just think that assessments don't do that, and we're going to be right back in the same place after spending the 14 million. That's all I'm saying to you, is that there's different experience levels, and an assessment with a DPD director writing the contracts is not what is needed. You need somebody on the outside to write those contracts that actually does that piece for a living, as an expert in it. And that's all I'm saying to you.
All right, and I agree. I mean, and that's what I mean. We're lucky to have Mr. Byrne here. He's got a wealth of knowledge. He did retire. He probably didn't plan on being where he is today, but he's here, and thank God we have him. So we're going to let him do his job. Councilor Robinson?
Thank you. Again, we've had Collins' report. We've had a ton of things in the past. Moving forward, we have money, we have resources, we have a will, we have some great people involved. I'd like to make a motion, both sides, 50-50, go out, bring in a neutral third-party professional to do a recommission report on all school facilities. And as Commissioner Byrne touched on earlier, let's start this playbook. Let's get on the same page as far as the playbook and the plan of attack. Once we get this report back, now it's up to the superintendent and his team, the city manager and their team, the commissioner, facilities. That's it. And now us as councilors can sit back and get updates as the work happens. And if they need something from us, we can provide that. But I mean, I think first things first, I'd like to make a motion, if I can get it seconded. Let's bring in a professional recommission report, both sides. Let's establish a playbook.
Okay, so we have
I
a
second
motion.
that. Can I second? Or, yeah,
Mr.
go ahead.
Rossi
Yeah.
seconded it. And if I could just ask a clarification, would this be instead of the HVAC?
Yes, I mean, let's start step one.
Okay.
Let's go ground up.
Just wanted to be clear.
I
on
mean,
that.
because you have to look at it this way. We have outdated and older information
Right.
where costs and other things, and also best practices and codes change. I mean, you'll bring in a neutral third party. They might come in and say, well, the old way of doing something as simple as, perfect example, plumbing, residential plumbing. I know this is very basic, but for years, copper was the go-to. All of a sudden, there's a thing called PEX. Cost is cheaper, easier to be run. I mean, these are the kind of things. Let a professional come in and say best practices, what we're seeing. People are shifting towards this. People are shifting towards that. Long-term solutions. I think, and it only comes from people that do this for a living, specialize in basically under a microscope looking at what we're up against, what needs to be fixed, what are the moving parts here, and where can we go with this investment that we're both willing to make sure it's long-lasting. And that's the key. It's longevity on these improvements. If we're putting this kind of money forward, let's look for something that's going to last our kids, students, parents, teachers for the future.
And before we do that vote, because we do have about 3 minutes before we have to close, I just want to kind of comment on something you had said earlier. The work doesn't happen in subcommittee, but from my perspective, we have not moved forward. We had a commitment when Councilor Leahy was mayor that we were going to put up $14.5 million or whatever the amount was, and we're seeing that money get depleted on other things. And my concern is that we get on the same page, which was, we're not going to get to the agenda item about the superintendent's capital spending report, but where it specifically says we need to have a plan of what's being spent, on how much and what it's going to cost. So I do see the way forward is the committee as a whole, the subcommittees, working together to support the two administrations in developing the plan, developing the costs, and the timeline. So I completely support your motion, but that's what the intention was by trying to move it forward through the facility subcommittees, because we were spending the money on other things. And I wanted to have it focus the commitment to go towards facilities. So we do have a motion on the floor, seconded by Mr. Rossi. Mr. Lay on the motion?
May I have a little bit more background on this? The motion is to have more study. I'm a little bit reluctant just because I don't know how much it's going to cost. And in the past, we have done a lot of studying, more study, and I feel that we have done a lot of studying in the past. Why we couldn't use the report from the last study? Why we keep on
Can I answer that, Mr.
bringing?
Chairman?
Why we keep on bringing new study and just delay, more delay? We have to wait
Mr.
for the
Chairman.
report to come out.
Yeah, 1 second.
Let him finish, please.
We keep on waiting for the report to come out. I don't know. I wanna hear the opinion from the facility personnel because they are the one working on it. Why we couldn't use their opinion on what to do next instead of waiting for the report to come out.
Council Gitcher?
Through you to school committee member Lay. What happens in 6 years to those units is they change a lot. So that report is basically obsolete. It's not something that you can entertain today because you may have sent staff to fix things. Now it changes that report. And also pricing has changed. And by doing it, what happens is one of your staff would go with someone who basically goes in and will investigate the whole unit, will show your staff what communicates, and they'll go through it. So at the same time, you're going to end up saving money in the long run rather than just throwing money at things and moving the pieces that way. So I think recommission reports are extremely important. And in the real world in facilities, normally HVAC units are recommissioned every 5 years so that you know what's working, what's obsolete, how you can get parts, and what you can do. So I think recommission reports are extremely important in any industry that runs an HVAC system. So it's just that the city doesn't implement that in their policies. So the policy should be units should be recommissioned every 5 to 10 years, so you know exactly its life expectancy, what parts you can still obtain, and how useful they'll be in the future. So a 6-year-old report actually is at the time that it would be redone anyway.
So,
Mr. Lay?
thank you, Madam Chair. So if we have to do the report, have to do more studying, are we putting any project on hold? Are we gonna wait until the report come out? And would that delay the final result of what we want to achieve?
Well, I think
So-
we'll speak to the whole committee on this because we had already budgeted, I believe it was $350,000 for this HVAC assessment, and this report would be instead of that. Is that correct?
Yeah, so here's the thing. It's like we understand what the goal is here. We can't spend foolishly. We can't let this money burn a hole in our pocket, as some would say.
We can't take forever.
Put the money on hold for now. Get a playbook that both sides are in agreement on, and let's start attacking. Instead of like, oh, well, we followed a 6-year-old recommendation. It costs $2 million to do this. We find out it's changed. We could have did something more efficient that's different cost, lower cost. Let's get something current, very current, that both sides are in agreement to, and let the powers that be designate the priorities. Again, both sides have buckets of money, ARPA and ESSA, that we don't control. Let somebody come in and say, here is a comprehensive look at the facilities. This is a comprehensive best practice moving forward. These are our suggestions, recommendations. I mean, we have a lot of resources. I hear in the past, this is a different administration, it's a different council, it's a different school committee. Everyone is willing to do it, and we have the money to do it, so let's do it right. That's really what it comes down to, no more, no less. So, I mean, if going out and spending, regardless of the cost of a comprehensive study, we get that back, we have a playbook.
Right.
We haven't had that in the past. This side has had a playbook. This side has had a playbook. The Collins report made recommendations. It never got followed. Unfortunately, money was wasted in the past. Let's not waste another penny.
Thank
Councilor,
you. We're at 6:32, and respect for, we have our school committee meeting. I would like to give Mr. Underwood an opportunity to weigh in.
So, and I all great points, and I think, the more knowledge we get is the more we get. But I also just remind them that there's a timeline on this money that has to be spent. you
Right.
know. So, we have to look at, do we have time, for the full report? Are we gonna have the commitment on the city side to make the report worthwhile? The $15 million the school department side, we've got that allocated in projects that we're intending to move forward with. So are we gonna are you gonna wait for a report that not gonna get implemented and the money's gonna dry up because there's no time left to spend it? So I'm just gonna end with that. Just remember, there's a timeline on this, and I'm not opposed to reports. It's just there's a lot of information we have right now, and I agree. I want to spend the money in the best possible way. The last thing I want to do is to see it dry up and go away before we make any decisions. We've been pushing this, a lot of different things down the road for the last year now, and there is a timeline on this money. Thank you.
And I'd just like to ask, Mr. Byrne, you mentioned that we're moving forward with multiple contractors for 4 or 5 schools currently around HVAC issues. We're adding chillers for the Pine and the Star Close. Can we still move forward with those priority projects while we're getting this additional information?
Absolutely. We're moving forward while we're getting this information. But I just want to touch on one base. The city's made a big commitment. MSBA, everything. $15 million for the schools. God love you. Keep giving us more money, okay? But let me tell you this, right? The city has made a $91 million commitment. MSBA funding, opera funding, capital improvements funding, and we're going to continue to make that. So I just want to make it crystal clear. The city is on board spending money. The city's on board making our schools safe. The city's on board making school improvements. This administration, this council's on board. So I just want to be crystal clear here, and I'm speaking, I think, on behalf of the city manager.
Thank you so much for that assurance. That goes a long way for me. We do have a motion and a second on the floor, and we're out of time, so can we do a roll call vote?
Roll call, please, yes.
Chairperson Doherty?
Yes.
Ms. Del Rossi?
Yes.
Mr. Lay?
Yes.
Chairperson Leahy?
Yes.
Councilor Getchir?
Yes.
Councilor Robinson?
Yes.
6 yeas approved.
I'm open to a motion to adjourn.
Motion adjourned.
Motion by
Second.
Mr.
Thank you.
Councilor Robinson, seconded by Committeewoman Del Rossi. All
Al-
those in favor?
All approved. Counselor Getchir, watch out for that foul ball.